So I'm John Graydon. Good morning, everybody. It's nice to see that as many people are coming in as just walked out then, so I'm hoping I've got the same size of audience at least. I'd like to talk to you today about what Siemens is doing in the areas of innovation, of digital technology. In particular, we focus on what we call the digital enterprise. And I think one of the things that's often not known about Siemens is that we have become very much a software organisation over recent years. And I hope for those of you who are not aware of that, by the end of my presentation, you'll appreciate, our capabilities in that space. And what I wanted to do to start with was just to reiterate some of the messages perhaps that we've already heard today. I'm sure we'll hear several times. Digitalisation, I don't think anybody's going to argue that it's having a huge impact on everybody's lives. Typical example here around food is the way in which we shop. I can't say that I get as excited when I go to the supermarket as this. In fact, I'm much more inclined to take the changed approach today, which is perhaps shopping online, a little bit more freedom. You can shop on your way home from work, you can shop at home, and so on. And along with many other changes in technology, I think the first speaker, Vincent, used the term disruptive technology. I'd perhaps like to say in some cases it's actually constructive technology, but it's definitely encouraging also changes in consumer behaviour. And one of the things is that consumers are really expecting more and more now, and they, not only in terms of choice of food and drink and so on, but also in terms of what information that they expect to get from that. So with this background, I think it's worth bearing in mind that actually not everything has changed. And I think the second speaker was talking about a typical situation in the food industry, in manufacturing, where often IT technology has been something that's been neglected. But while that's happening, the demands on the business, the competitive demands, have actually been increasing. So that there's a need to, as ever, to produce things faster, shorter production cycles, and produce new products and innovative products faster and get those to market quicker. This in turn requires greater flexibility in the manufacturing environment, while the quality side continues to be important. And then the need to be efficient in the face of cost pressure. The real cost of food is hardly rising in the supermarkets today. So therefore, it's harder and harder to maintain the profitability for the business. But of course, what's the main driver then to improve businesses is going to be around their innovation and their ability to create new products. Now, if we look at manufacturing, the value chain of the different processes in manufacturing, we can look at where we can add value, and maybe we could think in terms of throwing some technologies at that. Internet of Things, we've just heard some interesting ideas about what that might mean in terms of tracking of objects, of machines, of the products and so on. It might be cloud technology, it could be mobile computing, maybe it's 3D technology that enables some rapid prototyping to take place. But of course it's not just about picking technologies. It's about how these technologies work together and what you're actually trying to achieve with that. And I would argue that one of the main benefits of having a digital world is an improvement in the ability to virtualize. I'll explain a little bit more about that, because I'd like to use some examples here. If we look at some of the technologies that Siemens has, taking first of all the specification and product development support, what used to happen was people would work at the development bench in the development kitchen and produce a new recipe, a new pizza, a new lasagna or something, and later on they'd start to look at what that product was made up of, and they would then be thinking about the ingredients, about the allergens, about the other aspects, as long as that product was of interest. But today, what you start with is you start in the virtual world and you build up a nutritional profile of the product. Now that only works because the technology that we have now within our software enables you to do that very quickly. And it's a very practical way of testing out a new formulation, a new product, before you even start to spend time developing it. It's just one small example, and we'll come back to that. Another area of virtualization is around the scheduling in a factory, for example. We have a world-leading product in Preactor for finite capacity scheduling. And what that's all about is about planning up front so that what actually happens is what you plan to happen. And it's a critical benefit, because now the technology is able to support planners and schedulers much more quickly and flexibly than it used to be. You can put into there all the standard capacity constraints. You can put into there some optimization rules, some heuristic rules to help you to do it more quickly. And what would typically happen is you'll get a high-level plan coming in from some business system, an ERP system like SAP, and you may argue that is a virtual plan as well, and of course it is. But what you get when you bring it down to a more detailed level is that you're able to take into account some things that perhaps you can't at a higher level of planning. So you'll be looking at a shorter time scale. You'll take into account the cleaning procedures, the setup times, and any other factors like planned maintenance. And the Preactor software has demonstrated some incredible benefits to businesses in terms of customer service, in terms of inventory savings, it's often hidden and not understood how easy it is to find that out. So I'd encourage you to meet up with some of my Preactor colleagues from Siemens, and in fact we have Jeff Johnson over there from Kudos, who specialises in the food industry. I believe he's presenting later. It's a very interesting area, and it's a niche area, but well worth looking at. Another area I thought of as an example, and there are others of course, but we do a lot of work with simulation. Some similarities to the scheduling, but this is generally speaking much more carried out up front. It's in order to look at making transformational changes to a food manufacturing environment. Might be to do with ergonomics, the way people move around. It might be to do with the physical layout, or it might be simply to do with testing out a large number of different scenarios. But this can support you very much in making decisions about capital expenditure and big business transformations. All three of these different products are very key to providing productivity in particular areas of the business. Now, one of the messages that we have within Siemens is that we are our background is very much around automation around the factory, and we're able to bring the product world together with the process and the plant world to operate in parallel. So when you're developing products, you're not missing out on the opportunity to validate that against the production plant itself. What I'd like to actually, I'll just step back, because if you look over onto the left-hand side there, you'll see that we're looking at the upfront processes in terms of development. And I just wanted to think about those a little bit more, because this is the product lifecycle management, this is the R&D processes, the new product development and innovation, which I think is the key focus and the foundation for digitalisation of a business. Looking at the areas of the supply chain, and we heard earlier on from Vincent from the Lloyd's Register about tracking and tracing through the supply chain and the need for auditing, the need for proof. It's quite a complex but a very critical requirement, and it's very important that the businesses now are able to satisfy the legal requirements as well as industry expected requirements and customers too. So I've put up there a few examples of global regulations, but there's also the retailers themselves. Even if you're being audited by the BRC, you're still likely to get the same from Tesco's, from Marks and Spencer's, from Asda and so on. The amount of checking that has to be carried out will not reduce. It can only increase. Well, with that background of increasing complexity to manage, the consumers are demanding more and more products. They're looking for those in a faster time scale, and they are looking for information that previously was not necessary around a product, such as the sustainability of the way that was manufactured. So what our focus on within Siemens is to look at the being part of that supply chain and demonstrating that we can take the information from source and link it through to the end consumer or the retailer that's selling that product. Just a little bit of information here about consumer expectations. You'll see here that certainly the consumers are feedback in this government research was that they would definitely be trusting more in brands that can demonstrate the origins of the materials that go into the products. I notice also that down there things like the source of British ingredients is extremely important as well. So these sort of messages are indicating that the management of your data and having the ability to access that in a controlled way is more and more important. And we do this by centering at the heart of our solution the product specification. That's the source of all the key data, which will then be shared with the rest of the business. This statement here, in fact, sums that up, so that it's a definite confirmation that people are saying that they'd like more information. So within the business, I was talking more about consumers requiring information, but within the business there are a range of different demands and questions that need to be answered for new product developments, generally speaking, driving different questions for different users within the business. And to answer each of these questions, we would link all the data into one common source. So, for example, your formula, your raw materials, your packaging information, we can view all of these single sources of data as cogs in a big machine. And what we're trying to do is to provide a way to link those all together in an integrated environment. But this is not something for you to have to manage. This is something for us to manage by producing an environment which is a platform for product lifecycle management. To summarise the different people then, there's those inside the company, of course. I put technical management at the top of the list there because I think they tend to drive this kind of product-centric view. That data is then going to be used for managing all the quality controls, the auditing, the shelf life testing, the travel testing, the quality and so on. But the stakeholders are across the business and also outside the business. So what we need to establish is data ownership, and we need to establish common processes within the business. And this is what the platform will do. But acting as a single point of reference for data is not the only thing. What you need is some way of driving the innovation process. And this process, typically, this is just an example. It's a cycle, really. It starts with idea generation and planning, then goes through an iteration of development. This development iteration is where we make use of the ability of the tools to support formulation before getting to the stage of actually creating the products, as I described earlier. So nutritional profiles, checking out allergens, matching against legal regulations. Often products may be going into different markets in different countries, which may also have different regulations applied to them. The development then moves on to become a more formalised specification. The product goes through a launch phase when the final packaging and the artwork comes together with the product and launch and trials, and then a review process after that, which can then feed back into that. But what you're looking for within this is an environment that enables visibility for the key stakeholders and also helps people to work together and provide the data and facilitate the movement of the process as quickly as possible. So just to summarise, these are just a few of the modules that we have within our environment that we believe are essential to supporting the food manufacturer in their R&D processes. At the heart of this is the specification management, but we also have an electronic laboratory notebook, which is an environment really which is a little bit more free form, and the idea is to allow the creativity for people when they're doing early stage development and capturing ideas. One of the main benefits from having structured data in this environment is that you will be able to access the information at any time in the future. You don't lose any information. This is important for the business, for the protection of the intellectual property of the business, but it's also useful for people to be able to look back and to recover old activities, old developments that were carried out. So you get a combination of what's available today or what raw materials the business is currently using, but you can combine that then with new ideas. And a laboratory notebook is a first step in that. The next step, I would say, is the formulation, pulling together the edible part of the product. And we have what we call a formula workbench to enable you to do that. That does the nutritional profiling. You can set limits in that. That then feeds into the artwork development, packaging development, and all the later stages of the validation prior to launch of the product. There's also a relationship with suppliers and so on. So what you're building up here is information as much as possible, giving you a detail that will be reflected in the real world. So you're building up more and more of a virtual bank of data and knowledge about how this is going to be made. And to tie this in with something that I was saying earlier on, if you're developing a recipe and you're defining processes, at a certain point you'll be able to feed that into your scheduling system. Now, your scheduling system is generally speaking just working on the next few weeks of activity, but if you're wanting to really validate that a new product can be made, and you want to be able to confirm to the marketplace, to the retailers, that you can deliver a new range of products for the summer barbecue season, for example, you can then feed that directly into your scheduling system against some standard, typical capacity constraints and start to verify that. And it's that kind of thing, that kind of virtual capabilities, which is more and more being built into the Siemens capability, that will enable you to be 100% sure when you go to launch that you can meet the expectations of your customers. So just to summarise, the virtual world really is an overlay onto the real environment. It shouldn't interfere with the production processes, but it's going to become more and more important to remain competitive in the future, because that virtual engine will be running in the background of your businesses. It will be driving you in the future. So. Last three messages. I believe that virtualization saves time and will reduce costs. I think the innovation processes in particular are something that need to be invested in now, need to be going more and more digital. And of course, I'd like you to come and talk to Siemens about that. I think we've got a very interesting story to tell you. So if you have any questions, I'll be around today, or I'm happy to take some now if you prefer.